Je voudrais tout d'abord vous faire partager une conviction de femme. Je m'excuse de le faire devant cette assemblée presque exclusivement composée d'hommes. Aucune femme ne recourt de gaieté de cœur à l'avortement. Il suffit d'écouter les femmes.
Non, plus jamais la mort d'une femme pour un refus d'avortement.
Moi, je suis mère célibataire, j'ai eu un enfant sans me marier, et je suis pour l'avortement libre, comme un droit minimal et fondamental de la femme.
J'ai avorté clandestinement, si vous voulez, à mon époque. Et je veux que l'avortement soit libre et gratuit pour les jeunes femmes de maintenant.
C'était il y a 40 ans. La France se déchirait sur la question de l'avortement. Aujourd'hui, le débat semble clos. L'avortement est un droit fondamental. Ce n'est pas le cas en Irlande. Tout près de chez nous, l'avortement est toujours illégal et passible de 14 années d'emprisonnement. Depuis les années 70, la mode a certainement changé un peu et les réseaux sociaux sont passés par là, mais les revendications sont les mêmes. Et comme les Françaises en leur temps, les Irlandaises sont obligées de quitter leur pays pour pouvoir avorter dans un cadre médical.
Going for an abortion. That's what mean in my head is you have to take the boat.
And most of the people indeed who have terminations now, in fact, fly. But we all know.
Still taking the boat.
But we are still. It's still a metaphorical sort of a phrase.
It also has connotations of shame and of secrecy, and of being sent away.
So take the boat for me is, we don't want you, you're a problem, go. You know, we'll throw you off to another country and you can be their problem.
I think abortion is probably the last taboo in Ireland. Concepts of heaven and hell growing up in Ireland are so deeply ingrained, and very theological ideas of the absolute value that life has. You know, life is life from conception. I mean, even the morning after pill was a sin. You know, it's a very extreme set of, and very fundamentalist sort of set of beliefs, but they're very deeply ingrained in Ireland, and the very word abortion is completely toxic in Ireland. People don't want to say it, they don't want to talk about it, even if they're activists.
En novembre 2012, plusieurs milliers d'Irlandais descendent dans la rue pour exprimer leur stupeur. Savita Alapanavar, une jeune indienne de 31 ans, vient tout juste de décéder d'une septicémie à l'hôpital de Galway, une semaine après son admission pour un début de fausse couche. Malgré ce diagnostic sans appel et la douleur croissante de la jeune femme, les médecins ont refusé d'intervenir tant que le cœur du fœtus battait encore, conformément au 8e amendement de la Constitution.
The basic Catholic argument, as far as I'm aware, is that at the moment of conception, you have a person, and therefore abortion has to be wrong, the killing of a person. But that is equating a ball of cells with a living woman. And the Irish Constitution says they're of equal, they have equal rights. In the case of Savita in Galway, where the problem was medical, she was not looked after properly medically, But part of the reason for that was every doctor in the building knew that if he had carried out an abortion to save her life, he still could be jailed if it was found against him. So if doctors work under those threats, they will stand back from medical situations and not intervene when needed. Because if a woman has sepsis, you only have hours to act. And if doctors are naturally nervous in this area, women will die, and women have died.
I see men and I see women, and it's just fantastic that all of you have come out here.
La mort de Savita vient s'ajouter à la longue liste de drames médiatiques, tous anonymes, qui ont jalonné le débat sur l'avortement dans le pays. Mais pour la première fois, le drame a un nom, il a un visage.
A lot of people suddenly found it okay to talk about abortion within those very safe limits of compassion and sympathy for a dead woman. That made it okay to talk about it. And I think that that's a really great shame that it's only when there are these extreme tragic cases that people feel okay to talk about abortion.
Avec cette affaire, le gouvernement est obligé d'agir. En juillet 2013, l'Irlande finit par adopter une loi dite de protection de la vie durant la grossesse. Elle autorise l'avortement uniquement lorsque la grossesse met la vie de la femme en danger.
The new law was forced on Ireland by Europe. A woman in imminent danger of death, who is pregnant and who can be saved by having an abortion, can have an abortion. That's what should have happened for Savita. She needed to have an abortion to save her life. She didn't have it. If a woman is suicidal, under Irish law now, she can have an abortion. If she finds two psychiatrists from a panel of psychiatrists, convinces the two of them that she is suicidal, then convinces an obstetrician who isn't an expert on suicide, and all three of them agree, then she can have an abortion. But I think by the time you went through that, her friends would probably have got the money to take her to England.
I remember, I will never ever forget the day. You know, I'd been experiencing some symptoms, a little bit of nausea, and I thought, oh, it couldn't be possible. But I was going to the library and I thought, you know, maybe you should just go and check. And I went down to the health centre at the university and I went in and the nurse said, yes, let's do a test. And so she did a test and she came back and the result was positive. This is like the worst thing that could happen to you as a 20-year-old girl in Ireland. It's impossible to describe how devastating those words are. You know, you're pregnant as a 20-year-old girl. Of course, I immediately broke down in tears and my life was over and what am I going to do? And she, you know, gave me a hug and I walked out. And I had absolutely no hesitation at any point that there was no option but to have an abortion. It was inconceivable that I would have a baby at that time. I don't want to, I'm not ready to. It would be a really, really bad decision. It would be an irresponsible decision.
I didn't even have to think about it. It was once I accepted that I was pregnant and once I accepted everything that had come before it, then I could get on with it. You know, I just did it. Didn't even have to think twice about it, and I don't think twice about it. And one of the things that really, really frustrate me are those people that say, well, it's okay. Your abortion was okay because you were raped.
It was nearly 20 years ago now. I think it was either 96 or 97. And I had a particularly bad birthday because I woke up on my birthday and decided I really should do a pregnancy test because I'd been worried and discovered I was pregnant. And then I went to work and I received my notice from my job. So I had lost my job on the same day, and I just thought, oh great, now what do I do? I was 29 and I had no interest in having a child. It was not the time, it was not the place, nothing was right. So it wasn't a difficult choice, but the process was enormously difficult.
I couldn't talk to my friends who, every single one of them, are pro-choice activists. They're not just pro-choice, they're activists. It's not that I didn't want to tell them, I just couldn't find the words. And as an activist for 3-4 years beforehand, to not be able to find the words, to be voiceless, is the worst misery that you could go through. Beyond everything else, not being able to talk about it, what you'd been through. Nobody knew.
You never got a full picture. Nobody sat down with you and said, look, this is what you have to do. So it was hearsay by people, friends you had who had had abortions or knew somebody who'd had an abortion, would give you information. Somehow I found myself at a clinic on Merrion Square where I sat and talked to a doctor who, I can't really remember the details of the consultation as it was, but I said, yes, I want an abortion, and he said, fine, or I can't quite remember how it went, but the next thing I knew, I had an appointment in England.
If I help a woman with an abortion and I'm brought to court, I could lose my license and lose my livelihood. This could drag on for years. I could go to jail. So the women go away, and we don't know they've gone. They have abortions and don't tell us. They don't get to counsel in advance. They don't get counselling afterwards. They don't get health care. They're afraid to come perhaps and tell doctors if they don't know the doctor's ideological stance. So it's an area we're not involved in and we're not allowed to get involved in. And we cannot help them in any active way because of the threat of 14 years imprisonment.
At 20 weeks, we went for a full scan in the maternity hospital. You know, we had, the worst news. You know, the start of the day was so exciting. We were going to have a scan, we were going to see our baby, a family, you know, and so quickly, it's all taken away from you. The obstetrician spoke to us and he explained, he said, I'm afraid your baby has anencephaly. We went, we had never heard of anencephaly. He said it's a neural tube defect. He said that this condition is incompatible with life. And we were just in shock. We didn't understand, and he explained to us that the baby's skull, when the spinal column and the skull was forming, that the skull didn't close. But it was very final. It was very, there is nothing we can do, we're terribly sorry. Maybe the baby will die during the pregnancy, but maybe not. And he said, we can support you for the rest of the pregnancy here, but there is nothing else we can do for you in this jurisdiction. People are coming to us in the street and, oh, congratulations, and you must be so happy. Is this your first baby? It's very exciting. And Gabe particularly was thinking, how can I do this? How can I go to work? How can I go to the shops? How can I do anything? You know, if people come to me, what do I say? We started to think that maybe we would bring the pregnancy to an end, but we didn't know how. We didn't know where to go, who to talk to. The medical profession in Ireland could tell us nothing. Only you can go to the United Kingdom. That's a big country.
Il s'apprête à entreprendre un voyage nimbé de peur. Et pour cause, le droit de se rendre à l'étranger pour avorter n'est garanti que depuis 1992.
I had a friend who lived in England who was away, but his apartment was there. And he arranged for me to be able to stay in the apartment, that I could get the key from a friend, from his flatmate. So off I went to London. It was so horrible.
I had never been to England at the time. I had travelled, but I had never been to England, so it was really a foreign country for me to go. I was very fortunate that my boyfriend did support me, and we sort of, I don't even know where, we kind of got little bits of information through the doctor. We had to raise £700, which was an enormous amount of money at that time for two students who had no income, essentially. I had to get, sort of lie and get a student loan, you know, to say that I needed maintenance, whatever.
Because I'm an activist, it's easy to actually say, oh yeah, I'm going over for a day school, I'm going over to talk about this. And it's easy to deceive people. When you really want to do it, it's easy to deceive people, not that I actually want to. But yeah, one of the ways is, oh, I have to go over for this meeting. And again, my mum, my sister, my whole family didn't even ask, you know. They were used to me going off different places to do different things. So it was like, okay, well, as long as you're okay, that's fine.
It was just subterfuge, you know. You were doing things that you couldn't really tell people. And it wasn't so much that you felt that you were breaking the law. It was just that nobody ever talked about these things or the details of it. And you know, I was going to stay in my friend's flat, but I didn't want to tell his flatmate that I was there to have an abortion, because it just felt like such a ridiculous thing. Here I am in London.
We had only told our immediate family and our very closest friends, because we were afraid that somebody would try to stop us from leaving the country, because we were leaving the country to terminate a pregnancy. And if somebody knew who disagreed with us, that they might tell the police, or they might tell customs, or go to the court, and a judge would forbid us from leaving. Not necessarily rational fears, but we were afraid of this.
As you probably know, monsters live in the dark, and because of the complete absence of information, maybe our imaginations ran away a bit with us, but the fear, nevertheless, was genuine, even if irrational.
I went to speak to people I felt safe talking to, that I felt I wouldn't get a judgment, some of my closest friends. But even then I was quite surprised. There was a sort of a sense of I don't want to be contaminated by this issue. Or certainly, you know, one of the reactions I got was, well, you know, I don't judge you, that may be the right decision for you, but I wouldn't do the same thing. And this, you know, was from, you know, certain people who found themselves in the very same situation not that long after, and who did exactly the same thing.
I don't remember booking my flights. I don't remember booking the clinic. I don't even remember that. It was all autopilot, because you go into this system in your head where something takes over and you can't feel anything. You're looking at things through a glass mirror and nothing is getting through. I used a friend of mine in Britain. I used her name and address so that I wouldn't get caught or something, even though I knew how stupid that was. Again, I thought if I didn't have to use my own name, it wasn't happening. I wasn't one of those women that had to leave my country. I got to the clinic, don't even remember arriving. Again, I was just on autopilot, my head down at the ground, my earphones in. It was like I was just walking into the cinema. So I don't really remember it. It wasn't really a defining moment. And I went through the procedure, I woke up, and the procedure was done. Nothing to it. And all of the worry that I'd had was gone. I didn't have to think about this anymore.
The doctors came to you?
Yeah, they brought the medication that would start the labour. So with my lunch, you had already gone. So I was in the room on my own when the medication arrived. And it's just 2 little tablets. So I'm pushing them around, plate with a spoon, thinking, this is the point of no return now. So it was it was a difficult time. It was a difficult time anyway, but this was a very significant point in it as well. So, because I knew once I took them, there was no going back. I couldn't change my mind after that. But I went ahead and it started the labour. It took until the next day, didn't it?
It took until the next day for labour to really commence.
I got back to the hostel and then the cramps came. The painkillers started to wear off. And it was 3 o'clock in the morning and I was bleeding so heavily. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So much so that I was getting dizzy. And I was throwing up. So I was bleeding heavily and I was throwing up for about an hour before I could move. I actually thought I was going to die in that hostel. And nobody would have known where I was. I got up and I cleaned myself off and I left the money on the counter and I ran.
I remember waking up in the clinic and I turned around to, there was a woman in the room, in another bed in the same room. And I was really surprised to see that she was an older woman in her 40s, you know, because of course the myth about abortion in Ireland is that it's always stupid young girls who are careless and are, you know, promiscuous and get themselves caught. And of course that's so far from the truth. It couldn't be any further from the truth. And I was like, well, what's this woman doing here? And so I was talking to her, and she was a mother of 3 who, I can't remember the exact details, but she'd had 3 children. She couldn't afford to have any more children. I think her partner may have left her. And I suddenly realised that there were so many different stories to abortion. There were so many different reasons and different circumstances.
The clinic was fine. I mean, it was all really fine. The difficulties were the fact that you couldn't be straight with anybody. And you weren't having proper medical experiences as a result, because I felt always like, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. And, you know, if I say this, maybe they'll say, oh, well, that means you can't have an abortion. You know, that at any point you could say the wrong thing. That would mean you would be out of this loop you were in, that you weren't sure what it was. And I was 29 years old, reasonably confident, reasonably well able to look after myself, with a support network of friends and relatives who would not in any way have judged me or made me feel bad, who were there for me. I had somebody to go with me. I had a place to stay in London. I was lucky.
D'autres ne peuvent compter que sur l'aide de parfaits inconnus. Un réseau de bénévoles qui accueille les femmes venues avorter en Angleterre.
We've had people come from Cork, from Dublin, I think they're from all over actually.
Yeah, from all over Ireland. Yeah, some from really the villages. Like that woman we had last time. She was telling us she comes from a remote village in Ireland, so yeah.
We do actually sometimes get Northern Irish people coming as well, because it's also illegal in Northern Ireland, even though Northern Ireland is officially part of the UK. Abortion rights are limited, extremely limited in Northern Ireland as well. Kind of constant part of the hosting is having them here, feeding them, making sure they're okay, and then taking them the next day to the clinic. So that's the main task.
Basically, the whole process revolves around airport, clinic, and here. The order is always changing depending on the appointment of the woman.
Yeah, they usually sleep in this room because we don't have a guest room, unfortunately. So we have we're told, very comfortable airbed. Yeah. It's called an aerobed. And we just put it up here, and it's quite a high one, so it comes up to about here, I guess. So that's the people who are on the phones are so they're all London volunteers.
It's like a relay basically. So those people who pick up the phone and speak to them, they don't see them, they don't meet them or anything. So when we see them, it's our very, very fast interaction. We have not heard from them before. We have not, all we know is about their age and the stage of the pregnancy and things like that.
I think the thing I would like to be able to hear from them, but we don't ask because I just don't think we can really, is how they heard about Abortion Support Network, or how they got to know that there was this opportunity to get help.
I'm sure there are many people who come from Ireland and they have enough money and they can just come here and do it. But the fact that people will really not afford to do it, it's just a shame, and we would definitely want to help those people.
It's a really unfair law because it's about really discriminating against the poorest, and I think that's what gets us really angry, because it's something that if you have enough money and you have enough resources and you have enough support networks, you probably won't suffer the consequences.
The staff in clinics in the UK are so used to Irish women having to travel for what is, you know, quite a difficult experience. They're very kind. They're really, really compassionate. And I felt that's a compassion that, you know, we find that in the UK, and Irish people can be so critical and dismissive of English people, of British people, and of English culture. And these people were prepared to be compassionate to a young Irish woman, you know, in a crisis situation, when Irish people who, you know, wax on about Christianity and Catholicism and life and values, and there was no compassion in Ireland. That compassion was not there.
Elles sortent d'une intervention qui peut parfois être douloureuse. Mais contrairement à leurs voisines de chambre, elles ne peuvent pas suivre la principale recommandation du médecin, du repos.
I stayed overnight in the clinic, and I came out the following day, and we had a flight that evening, and I just felt absolutely miserable, you know, and you don't want to be sitting on a plane when you feel miserable, you know, you want to be at home in your own bed. And yeah, I remember that now. I think I've probably just put all that kind of out of my head, really.
And I remember coming back from England, and, you know, I had to get on a plane bleeding, basically. And I mean, it's just horrific. It really is. It's horrific to put young women through that. To put them on planes. And how can a state that calls itself Catholic and compassionate put women on planes when they're bleeding and when they're terrified and when they're vulnerable and alone, and say, we won't support you, we won't value you or your life or your decision? It's utterly barbaric and it's utterly misogynistic. That was probably the worst part, actually. Come home to my house and just feel really alone. And I went to try to talk to friends, and everyone was studying for exams, and some people were really supportive, but people didn't really want to know, you know, and I really felt I was on my own.
We had our A story and our B story. The A story was what the few knew, the few people closest to us knew. And the B story was the miscarriage story. And I really resented my son being referred to as a miscarriage. So it didn't sit well with me. So with the result that really it didn't get spoken about at all. Just we lost our first son at 22 weeks and never went any further than that, really.
You don't talk about it. And I remember my nieces, or my partner's nieces, talking about abortion, young women, 15, 16, and they were kind of thinking about pro-choice and, you know, the difficulty, you know, thrashing around the issues for them as 15 and 16-year-olds. And we were talking about it, and afterwards my partner said to me, why didn't you tell them you had had an abortion? And I said, yeah, you know, I don't know why I didn't.
This was like a secret. Don't talk about it, people won't understand. You know, you might be judged. Because what we did, what was best for us, best for family, it was illegal in Ireland, and still is illegal in Ireland. So that makes us criminals. Even leaving aside religion or any beliefs, this was the law. So if you commit a crime, you can't go telling everybody because it's a secret. So you have to live like this. It's damaging. It caused a lot of damage.
And I had to leave my job because my mental health was so bad. I had to leave my family. And I ended up on a farm in West Cork because I couldn't deal with the rest of the world. I couldn't deal with the city. I couldn't deal with knowing that my rapist could have been around the corner. And in February, I found out that he had been arrested for practically raping a 13-year-old. He was arrested in May. He was let go in May. He raped me in August and was rearrested in October. And he only got 2 years. And yet, if I had taken the abortion pill, if I had done anything in this country, in my country, I could have gotten up to 14 years. And for the first 6-7 months after coming back, even though I knew I had support, I was afraid to go to any doctor. Because if they checked me at all, they could report me. Because of the level of stigma and anti-choice lobbyists that are out there.
The pro-life movement is incredibly strong in Ireland. It's almost kind of part of the tapestry of Irish culture as you grow up. It's almost sort of like part of the normal furniture of Irish life, the pro-life movement.
What is the biggest challenge facing the pro-life movement in the country today? Is it the fact that we have too few perinatal hospices, which means that families who find themselves facing fatal-fetal abnormalities are put under extra undue pressure? Is it the fact that we're consistently told that our constitutional ban on abortion is unique in the world, as if we should be ashamed of the fact that we recognise the sanctity of human life when so many other countries have lost that battle?
The truth is on our side. I think at the moment, what we're in the middle of is a storm of what I call false opinion. And that's why we're here today, because so many of us realise the reality for many people here in Ireland is not that people want abortion in this country, it's that people are genuinely confused.
I am traditional and I have strong family values. From an early age, I always wanted to be married and to have a proper family. Becoming a mother on my own was not something I had ever envisaged. I couldn't stop thinking about how unfair it was that this had happened to me. This wasn't something I had chosen for myself. All of my life plans lay in ruins. But then one dark, wintry morning, in the early pregnancy unit in the Rotunda Hospital, that changed everything. On a grainy black and white monitor, I saw my baby's heartbeat. And that pulsing little star changed my unplanned pregnancy into a human being, who in a flash I loved with a love that I had never known.
They look at it in a simplistic way. It is the murder of babies. What society would murder its babies? Atheistic societies around the world murder their babies. We don't murder our babies. This is the only language they will use, and they will use it very strongly.
En guise de renfort, le mouvement peut compter sur les militants pro-vie américains, toujours ravis de venir prêcher en Europe.
I can tell you, you do not want procedures like that taking place on Irish soil. You do not want women and children to go through that kind of victimization and abuse in your land. You know, looking at Ireland from the United States perspective as a pro-life activist, we look at you and we admire your strong record of defense of life. You have been guardians of both the mother and the baby. And, you know, it's hard to watch outside forces with big pockets of money trying to come in here and pressure Ireland into changing the laws. I would encourage you to remain that lighthouse in the ocean that stands up for women and babies and is a guardian of life, as you have been so many years. I thank you for having me, and I'll close there.
Il n'aura fallu qu'1 an pour que la loi dite de protection de la vie durant la grossesse révèle son absurdité et son inefficacité. En août 2014, une jeune migrante se voit refuser un avortement malgré ses tendances suicidaires.
I've never interviewed someone so vulnerable and broken in all my years of journalism, and the journalism I do is interviewing vulnerable, you know, hurt, disappointed, badly treated people. But this girl was just the most appallingly traumatized human I'd ever had to interview. And this is the human impact. This is what our country and our laws are doing to women and their families.
C'est en arrivant en Irlande que la jeune fille découvre qu'elle est enceinte de 8 semaines. Elle avait été violée dans son pays. Au planning familial, on lui conseille d'aller en Angleterre, mais la jeune fille est sans papier et démunie. Personne ne lui parle des réseaux de bénévoles qui existent de l'autre côté de la mer. Désespérée, elle tente de mettre fin à ses jours. 2 psychiatres attestent qu'elle est en danger, mais le temps a filé. Le fœtus est maintenant presque viable. Les médecins finissent par forcer la jeune fille à accoucher par césarienne, à seulement 26 semaines.
There seems to have been a lack of clarity earlier in the pregnancy about how to help her and how to advocate for her. But I suppose what the case really shows is how impossible it is to vindicate the rights of the unborn child and the mother when her life is at risk equally. I can only imagine in the hospital when she was 23, 24 weeks pregnant, trying to vindicate a near viable baby's life and a clearly suicidal mother's life. I mean, there were two, you know, competing rights, and they had to vindicate them both equally, and that must have been just impossibly difficult.
Le bébé a été placé en soins intensifs. Et les militants pro-vie n'ont rien trouvé de plus approprié que de le baptiser Hope, espoir en anglais.
We love you, baby hope. We love you, baby hope. Baby hope, we love you. Baby hope, we love you. Very good. And thank you so much for coming out here in such great numbers and sending this huge message of love and support to this tiny little baby. And this little baby is gasping for breath in an ICU as a direct consequence of Enda Kenny's Abortion Act. And I need to say that if the Taoiseach has any conscience at all, he should be ashamed of what he has done.
This appalling case proves, if ever proof were needed, which indeed it was not, that the so-called protection of life during pregnancy is a dismal failure of an act. Far from
Pour la première fois, les pro-vie et les pro-choix sont d'accord sur un point. La nouvelle loi est une mauvaise loi. Alors que les pro-choix dénoncent une loi insuffisante, inapplicable et dangereuse pour les femmes, les pro-vie craignent que la clause de suicide ouvre la voie à l'avortement à la demande.
The anti-abortion people would like it to have a referendum to get rid of the suicide clause, which gave rise to this young girl's right to have an abortion in the first place. They would say abortion is never a way to treat suicidality. Other people would say it can be part of the way. So a woman who is suicidal, it may be one of the things she needs as well as a lot of other things. That of course abortion isn't going to cure suicidality, but it might certainly help in a big way if a woman is suicidal because she's pregnant.
What was the role of the Irish Family Planning Association in this sad and tragic case? The answer is very obvious. They're an abortion agency. They're part of an industry that makes millions from hurting women and killing children, and their funding should be withdrawn immediately. Step out onto the road to my right, and we're going to go together and march to the Irish Family Planning Association.
When it came to divorce, we had a referendum on divorce. The Catholic Church stayed out of that. They didn't use their power publicly. And with gay rights, they'll stay in the background because they feel there's only one battle they want to fight, abortion. So they will fight really hard when that comes out. Both the non-church anti-choice people and the Catholic Church will be funded hugely from America for this. They will get vast funds because to the American right, which is not just Catholic, it's fundamental, it's Protestant as well, Ireland is the last place left where abortion does not exist. And we are the last battle for them. So they have unlimited funds.
I'll ask you a simple question. Are you glad the baby's alive?
It's not my choice.
No, are you glad? I'm not your choice. I'm saying, are you glad the baby's alive?
Now that the baby was forced, I don't care.
Oh, you don't care?
No, I don't.
You don't care about the baby?
Two better than one. Two lives.
Because people on the pill have become
Two lives have been saved. Are you not happy with that?
No, I'm not, because that woman was forced to go through pregnancy that she didn't want.
Babies are murdered in the mother's womb. How depraved can you get? It's so barbaric. These beautiful young girls, they're believing a lie. They believe the lie that to kill is all right. It's not okay.
It's a choice. We just want the choice there.
Le seul moyen de changer la loi en profondeur est de retirer le 8e amendement de la Constitution. Et pour changer la Constitution, il faut un référendum. Ce sera donc aux Irlandais eux-mêmes de trancher le débat. Si la classe politique se décide à leur poser la question.
Politicians, by their very nature, are generally unprincipled. There are very few politicians who, by the time they get elected, are interested in championing issues or causes. Most of them are motivated by a desire to stay in power, so that they then become people who just want to offend nobody. They are the people who walk in the middle of the road. They don't want to upset either side, so they do nothing, and they don't want to change anything.
Here we go.
And normally, change really only comes about from people outside of parliaments forcing these people to make changes, because it's just a conservatism from them. They feel, oh, if they take up this issue, they will lose votes. That because they believe that the anti-abortion lobby would vote against them for that reason, but the people who support abortion would maybe have many different reasons for casting their vote.
I think if there was a referendum to repeal the 8th, I think it probably would. I mean, you can never be too sure because, you know, you never know what's going to happen on the day. I think it probably would pass to repeal the 8th as long as it came with a promise that it's not going to be abortion on demand. I don't think Ireland is anywhere near that kind of point of view. But all the opinion polls over the last 10 years have shown that people feel that abortion should be there for people who've been raped, where there's been incest, where the woman is carrying an unborn child with a fatal anomaly, or where in the case where a woman is suicidal. There would be a still significant majority would feel where a woman's health is a serious threat, that she should be entitled to terminate the pregnancy here.
We will not forget the choices women have made to travel for abortion. 12 women a day to the UK, countless more to other destinations. And we will make noise for the women who have not been able to travel. For all of those people, we are speaking with our feet.
I think there must be thousands of Irish men walking around thinking, I don't know anyone who's had an abortion, who are utterly wrong, because it could be their mother, it could be their sister, it could be their best friend, it could be their wife. In fact, it probably is their wife who has had an abortion at some time in a previous life, and they haven't felt courageous enough to tell that man. So, you know, everyone in Ireland knows several women who have had abortions.
The population were pushed into thinking of abortion in the abstract because it wasn't available in the country, and the taboo, abortion was in the abstract, and you had the pro-lifers lining up and saying, it is murder. And it's only really in the last decade that the tide has turned, where people are starting to come from a choice position and then say there should be maybe some limits. So the tide has turned. The tide has turned dramatically on the issues. All of the things that have happened in this country mean that people are now thinking about it in the concrete.
Hear our voice! We want choice! 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 Hear our voice!
I don't feel in a position to make judgments on anybody else's reasons for making whatever decision they make. I didn't want to be judged for mine, and I don't feel in a position to make judgments for anybody else. So I think we should be treated as adults, and I think the legislation should be in place to allow people to make choices for themselves. And I believe that we shouldn't be nannied by the state.
I am totally pro-choice. So I believe the Canadian system is perfect. Abortion is not mentioned in Canadian law. Abortion is something that happens between a doctor and a patient, like an appendicectomy. There is no law. It's just a medical procedure. Let the woman and the doctor sort it out. Why have a law?
Ho, ho, 8th Amendment has to go! Ho, ho, 8th Amendment has to go! Niggers! Our right to decide! Our bodies, our lives, our right to decide!
I went to my sister and my father and my brother and I said, I'm going to be public about my abortion, my experience. I'm just letting you know. I didn't ask their permission, but I just wanted them to know in case they got any negative response. But I don't apologise for that. I think I have the right to talk about my experience. I think Irish women really need to talk about their experience. I think it's absolutely crucial. The more Irish women that can be open and feel unashamedly, unculpably open and free to speak about their experiences of their own abortions, the more Irish men and Irish society will have to acknowledge the existence of that.
It shows you that you're not alone, and it empowers you to do something, and it empowers you that what you feel is right, and what you feel, it's okay to feel that way. For me, being an activist in the choice movement is one way of saying, I've had an abortion. My life isn't ruined because I've had an abortion. My life was ruined because I was raped. And I was raped again by this country turning its back on me.
It's not an opinion. It's not a political idea. It's our story. It's our personal experience. It was horrible. If the law changes tomorrow, it won't change anything for us.
Abortion rights! Now! Abortion rights!
Let's go from here, determined to make this an issue for every political party in the countdown to the next general election. Let them know that we're not prepared to wait. We need legal, free, safe abortion in Ireland for all of the circumstances that women need it. None of them easy, all of them valid. And while we're at it, let them know that that's actually not all we want, because we're here marching for choice. Yes, for the right to have an abortion, but also for the right to have children when we want, how we want, and the right to raise them with dignity and without fear of poverty and violence. You have done a great thing by being here today. We are the new Ireland. We are privileged to be part of a generation that will deliver long overdue change and ensure that it's our bodies and our choice.